I guess it's a go.
Okay. Norma, were you on the call last time that I did the presentation? It was.
I've been on every one of them.
Oh, good for you. That's awesome. No wonder you were talking about being zoomed out.
Yeah, we're going to give her a prize.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, yeah, the most attended attendee.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's see here. I'll share my screen. Let's see. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yep. Perfect. Great. I'll go slideshow. Perfect. So since everybody's been through the first presentation that I did of motivation, everybody knows who I am. And everybody probably knows my whole spiel about the Heart and Stroke Foundation and what I do and their mission statement and how the Live Well program fits in. And so I don't want to go into that if everybody's heard it already. Does anyone have any questions about any of it? Or would you like me just to get right into the stress stuff? Yeah, okay. All right.
The talk was awesome. And,
thank you.
yes.
Thanks.
And I love the fall colors on your trees.
Oh, thank you. So that's actually, that picture was actually taken in St. John a couple of years ago in October. And it was actually, if you're familiar with the Irving Nature Park, it's the big, long jet out walkway, I guess boardwalk that they have there. So it was taken there.
Very nice.
Yes, yeah.
It's lovely.
Yeah, so since we're a small group, I mean, it'll be fairly easy to you know, ask questions or whatever if you want to wait till the end, or you know, if you want to shout it out. I know you, Norma, have to leave at 1:30, so we'll make this kind of quick, and I know hopefully, you know, you'll get all the information you need by 1:30 before you have to leave. So the first thing that I always like to start out with, as I mentioned on my last talk during the motivation, is a grounding exercise. So I always like to start off with a grounding exercise. And last time we did a breathing exercise, just kind of taking a few moments, but this time we're going to do something different. So has anybody heard of the 5-finger breathing technique before? No? Okay, so it'll be new.
No.
Okay, good. I like when stuff is new for people. So what you do is you can hold out your hand like this. And what you do is you start at the bottom. So you take your index finger of your other hand, you start at the bottom, and you trace slowly your hand. So every time your hand goes up, you breathe in, and then every time your hand goes down, you breathe out, and then you can pause kind of in the middle of the joint. So we'll actually go through that together right now. So you can hold up your hand. So, all right, so breathe in, and then breathe out. And then breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, and then breathe out. So it's kind of just a good one to have, because you have your hand, you know, it's right with you, and you know, you can kind of just do it, you know, really slowly as you want. And then once you're done tracing it and you get to the end, you can decide whether if you need another 5 or if you're okay. So yeah, so it's a nice little way of doing that, just to because I know sometimes people will say, oh, just stop and take a breath or breathe, but sometimes it's nice to actually have something to do, right? To kind of, and then there's an end to it too. And then you can decide if you want to do it over again. So I like doing that sometimes. Do you notice any difference in how you feel from like maybe you're just kind of feeling a little bit lighter or just kind of a little bit more calmer? Sometimes
Both.
people, yeah, both.
Both,
Okay,
actually. Oh,
good.
yeah. That's a
Oh,
good
good.
it's a good way of doing it. I
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's easy, and you know, I was working with a client a couple weeks ago, and my client was actually using that, but she had gotten her kids involved, so it's really easy too, because she was actually starting to do it not only for herself but with her kids too. So it's a really good one to do with, you know, somebody else, or you know, a child or somebody like that too. So yeah, yeah, yeah. So, any questions on any of that? No? Good. And you can always look up, there's YouTube videos on how to do that too, and that kind of walk you through too. So if you want kind of another person showing you or a visual, you can always go to YouTube and look up 5-finger breathing exercise. And there's lots of different videos that will walk you through it too. Yeah, so it's just nice to have something like that to do. So since we already went through the, well, I'll go through the overview just so you know kind of what we're going to be talking about. But essentially, we've already talked about the mission statement and what we do as health coaches, you know, a week ago or so. I won't get into that, but we'll do a mini stress less little workshop type thing. So you can get another small snapshot of what the health coaches can help you with if you do end up reaching out to one of us to meet with us one-on-one. So, and then of course the mission statement from Heart and Stroke fits really nicely into the Live Well program, promoting health, saving lives, and enhancing recovery. And of course, our funding partner, which is the Government of New Brunswick, makes the Live Well program possible because they're they fully fund the Live Well program. And then of course, you know about what we do as health coaches. We've gone through this previously. One of the things too that I just like to bring up when I'm doing the Stress Less presentation is that, you know, we also help people with chronic conditions, and stress is so much linked to chronic conditions. So, you know, it's a really good one to really work on because it's connected to so many different things. I mean, you know, having high stress is linked to high blood pressure, and then that's linked to heart disease, and that high blood pressure is linked to diabetes, for example. So it's kind of linked to a whole bunch of different chronic conditions. So stress is a really good one to work on. And I find sometimes that when I'm working one-on-one with people, a lot of times people will automatically say that they want to work on physical activity and healthy eating because that's the first thing that comes to mind when people think of their health. But there's so many different avenues that people can work on, and stress is a really huge one to help people with, and it's connected and linked to so many different things around people's health too. So of course, you know about how we guide and prescribe changes, help people set manageable goals, connect to resources, help people brainstorm, connect to all kinds of different community resources as well. So I know I gave quite a number of examples on my previous talk as well. Is there any questions on any of that? No? I know you guys have heard it all before. So then
it's always good to be reminded.
Yes.
So even though we do we've heard it, it always makes a difference when you hear it again.
Good. I'm glad. That's great. So as you know, health coaching offers supportive relationships, and we meet people for a defined period of time. So you know, we don't meet with people forever, but we meet with people until they're comfortable and confident in working on their health and have the strategies and the tips and tools that they need to continue on their own health path as well. So this is our contact information. So I know you probably all have this as well, but just to review it again. So we have our toll-free 1-800 number. We have our website. We have our Facebook, we have our Instagram, and we also have our email address, the info@lwbb.ca, where you can reach all the health coaches. So yeah, and I have a slide at the very end that has all the health coach pictures, and my contact information as well. So this is kind of the general line to kind of get in touch with the health coach, but I'll have my information at the very end. So to get into what you signed up for the workshop here. So what is stress? So what do you think of? What comes to mind when you hear the word stress?
How it's, well, I guess, especially recently, how it's everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it just, there's a steady flow of stress.
Yeah.
And then there's peaks, obviously, but there's a steady flow. And I presume I'm not the only one feeling that that level, but
yeah,
it's palpable. You can measure it now, and then
And there's both positive and negative stress. I need a little bit of stress in my life to push me to do certain things. It's when that gets to be too much, that it gets to be on the negative side of the continuum.
Yeah, you're right.
Absolutely. Oh, for sure. And it's interesting too, because we do absolutely need a little bit of stress to push us and make it so that, you know, we're pushing ourselves and challenging ourselves and growing, right? But then stress sometimes can be a little too much. And when it gets to be a little too much, sometimes we need some strategies in place, for sure. Absolutely. And how does stress come out in your body? I know, and to kind of give a little bit more information about that. So for myself, I always get, you know, butterflies in my stomach, or, you know, sometimes I'll shake a little bit, or my voice might be a little off, or, you know, what happens for you in your body when you're stressed?
Tension.
Yeah. So maybe like
jaw.
your shoulders are up to your jaw. Yes.
Headache.
Yeah. Headache. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know. I guess I probably don't admit I have stress, but it's there. So I probably tiredness, I would say.
Tired
probably
is a huge one. Yeah, that's a huge one for people. A lot of times people will say that they feel more fatigued than usual, because stress requires a lot of mental energy and it takes up a lot of mental space. Yeah, so absolutely, for sure. Yeah. So to go through kind of just a general definition that's been adapted from several different places. Stress is a natural reaction in our bodies and minds when we are overwhelmed by feelings or situations we're not comfortable with. So it's kind of things that are out of our comfort zone. We're kind of, you know, a little hesitant, or, you know, kind of get some feelings like that. So, and it's good to, you know, be aware of what kinds of things make you stressed. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but you know, we can always learn from what we do and the stress that we encounter. And we had a great segue into the talking about the positive and negative stress. So is all stress bad? So no, not all stress is bad. So as Nora mentioned, you know, there's positive stress and there's also negative stress. So positive stress could be things like planning a vacation, planning a wedding. It could be a holiday that's coming up, whatever it might be. So there's kind of, you know, the feelings of excitement and joy, and, you know, you're looking forward to something, but there's also that underlying stress that can happen. So one of the things to note is that most of our stressors are on the outside and are things that we can't control. So one of the things that I like to use as a metaphor for this is that if you think about an ocean, and the ocean has lots of waves coming in, and we can't stop those waves, but we can actually learn to surf and be okay with them. So it's kind of just learning a little bit how we react, and being aware of what kinds of things stress us out, and what's within our control and what's on the outside that we can't control. And it's also about how we interpret, react, and manage our stress, because there's different ways to do that, and there's some more effective ways than others. So it's kind of figuring that out. And there's many areas where stress can come from. Could be the traffic, it could be the weather. I was working with somebody last winter, and their stress was winter storms. Even though they didn't work, they stayed at home, but their stress was winter storms and cleaning up their driveway, even though they didn't have anywhere to be, right? So, and one person's stress might be very different from another person's stress. So I'll talk a little bit about that in the next slide. But is there an area in your life where you can identify that there's stress? Like, would it be traffic, workload, I don't know, family, chronic condition? Like, what would you say if there is an area of your life that is stressful, what would that be?
Maybe
you
the
don't have to
unknown.
share. Yeah, the unknown.
Like
yeah.
the future.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a really good one. And you're absolutely right. The unknown is really tough. And, we often worry about things that won't happen, or, we kind of put ourselves through certain situations that will never happen, but it stresses us out because we don't know what's happening. And especially for personality types who are type A, who, like to be organized and like to know what's going on, it's really tough for those type of personalities, for sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
To me, it's time management.
Yeah.
Used to be, when I'm retired now, but when I was working, it was trying to fit everything in a working day. Now it's trying to fit everything in a retired day, and it's just as stressful as when I was working. So again, it's also part of nature when you're not as able as you should be to say no to certain things.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, for sure. And you're so right too that, it's really tough. I mean, you just mentioned about retirement. A lot of people will tell me that their retirement is busier than when they were working, and having to say no oftentimes stresses people out too. So yeah, that's a huge one. Absolutely. Yeah.
That's one for me.
Yeah.
Setting the limits, and I don't do that very well.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess much like Norma, I'm a retired executive.
Yeah.
Workaholic.
There's different words to all of it, but you don't want to admit that you have to say no because you've already have too much. So you're always tempted and to stretch it to the very limits, and then you are.
Yeah, and then you're
the process of getting that's right. Of getting stretched
absolutely.
out. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
And so I recommend to anybody not to retire.
Oh.
It's more restful to work than to retire and become a volunteer. I say that lightly, but
there's an element of truth to that.
Yes, it has a connotation.
Yeah.
But a good one. A good one.
Yeah. So that takes us to our next slide of what are your stressors. So I know you've kind of touched on a little bit of that, so I'll kind of elaborate a little bit on that. So there are so many things that people can find stressful. And both of you, Claire and Norma, you brought up some really great points about a life transition. Like going into retirement is a huge transition. And you know, getting used to that, and there's a whole bunch of other stressors that comes along with any type of life transition. So yeah, absolutely, that's definitely really tough. And I know I mentioned this on the previous slide, but people's stress can be very different. So what stresses one person out might not stress another person out at all, right? So and to Norma's point earlier about, you know, you do need a little bit of stress. There is a certain amount of stress that can push us out of our comfort zones and really challenge ourselves and where we can grow as a person. So it's kind of finding that balance in between what is going to be an okay stress level where we can push ourselves, but not push ourselves too much that, you know, we're doing too much, but push ourselves in a productive way where we can grow as a person and get out of our comfort zones a little bit. So just to say some examples, I have some examples written down on my sheet here. So, you know, some things that might stress people out that, you know, don't stress anybody else out could be dishes, cleaning. It could be, you know, saying no. It could be money. It could be high expectations. It could be going to the gym. Going to the gym stresses a lot of people out. I have had quite a number of clients over the years that have told me that, you know, going to the gym and not knowing where to go, or even just going to a new place the first time can be really stressful because you don't know what door to go into, you don't know the people there. Like, it's just new experiences are sometimes very stressful. Yeah. So one of the things that I always tell people to do is that when we go through certain stressful situations and we reflect and we look back and we learn from them, what actually happens is resiliency. So resilience is our ability to adapt or bounce back in specific situations or specific stressful situations. And so what ends up happening is that we might go through something and we think, oh my gosh, I'm so glad that that happened. But if we also think, you know, what if this comes up again? And how am I going to deal with it if it does come up again? It can also help us be ready for the next time it happens. So there's 3 key questions that I like to ask people to help build their resiliency and to help with self-reflection. So after going through a stressful event, I like to ask people, what did you find made it easier to get through that stressful event? So was it, you know, a person that supported you through it? Was it having a journal to write your thoughts down? Was it seeking professional help, such as a counselor or somebody like that? Whatever made it easier to get through that stressful situation, you kind of think about that and reflect on that. And then what made it difficult to get through that situation is the second question. So what made it difficult to, you know, was it long days? Maybe somebody was working on a project and it was long hours, or, you know, volunteering or whatever that made it difficult. So what were the things that made it difficult? And then the third question to ask yourself when you're reflecting back is what made it, what's going to make it easier the next time that this comes up? So what can be helpful for this situation when it does come up again? So how can you adjust your plan and move forward and learn from that, basically, right? So there's all kinds of different things that might help people or hinder people, but it's the act of reflecting back that really makes a big difference. So are there certain situations that like, have you ever tried reflecting back before, and has that helped you, or have you ever tried that before? No?
Probably not consciously.
Yeah.
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 Like
Yeah. Yeah.
mindfully.
Yeah. And it's funny because I was actually expecting you guys to say that, because that's what a lot of people will say. They'll say that I've never thought about it like in that way before, to actually do it consciously. Yeah. So it's really interesting because we often don't think about these things to do for ourselves. So it's really interesting to actually kind of, think about it and think, oh, okay, how would I add this into my life, or what would this help with? Yeah, it's really interesting.
We should, in a way, we should build in these conscious exercises, whether
Yeah.
it's well, half a minute, a few
Yeah.
seconds, just
Yeah.
to say, okay, how do I bounce back? I'm
Mhm.
sensing this, and you probably, not probably, we would feel much lighter because we've dealt with it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we just push it down,
Yeah.
push it in, and yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's so interesting because you're absolutely right. Like we just don't think about doing these things for ourselves, right? And it's just kind of on to the next thing after we get through something, right? So yeah, and there was actually there's a counselor here in St. John, and you may have heard of her. She's very community focused and very out there with strategies and tips for people, but her name is Laura Gation, and it's Laura Gation Counseling Services. And her Facebook is very active. And so you can go on and like her page, and she has lots of different tips and strategies on there. And one of the things that she recommends is a check-in, just throughout the day, and just stopping and asking yourself, how am I doing today? And how's my day been? Do I need anything right now? So it's kind of and I can't remember what she calls it, but it's a check-in from the neck up, or something like that is what she calls it. So yeah, just kind of checking in with yourself and seeing how you're doing, because oftentimes we just finish a task and then we go right on to the next one, and we just don't stop and think. Even myself, I mean, it's funny. I'll have meetings with people, and people will say, "Oh my gosh, you're a health coach. You probably do everything." And I'm saying no. I say, I'm just like everybody else. I forget to do things like that for me too, and I need the
Uh-huh.
reminders. So yeah, yeah. So it's interesting though, because we do forget about doing things for ourselves sometimes.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So now we can talk about what can we do with stress. So once we've, kind of identified our stress and where it's coming from, and reflected back, what else can we do? So one of the things that I think people can get caught up in is that the list of things that we can do for our stress can be so overwhelming. Um, I know when we do this workshop in person, one of the times what I've done for a visual is have a few different balls, and have one person get up in the front of the room and try and keep all the balls afloat, and not touch the ground, right? And the balls represent, family, work, volunteering, whatever it is, right? All the different aspects of our life. And, it's hard to keep all the balls juggling. But you can also use that same metaphor for the list of things that we can do for our stress. There's proper sleep, proper nutrition, there's getting exercise, there's drinking water. Like, all the balls can be associated with things that you can do for your stress too. And it can be hard to, figure out where to start or what to do, right? And keep all those balls afloat. So one of the ways that we like to think about this is to divide up all the things that you can do for your stress into two different categories. And the two categories are relief and the other one is refuel. So before we get into what they mean and how they're kind of associated with stress and what we can do with them, I just want to ask you first, what comes to mind, or what words come to mind, or feelings come to mind when you hear the word relief? What comes to mind?
Like
Like a sigh
An
of relief,
exhale.
maybe. Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Sort of, yeah, letting the air out, much like a,
Yes.
well, I guess much like a balloon, if
Yeah.
we compare. And
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's the thing too. It's kind of almost like letting it out, like whether it's a sigh or the weight or the pressure is off us, it's kind of a relief that, oh, that's done, or oh, now I can just kind of rest and relax for a few minutes. And what do you think of when you hear the word refuel? What do you think?
I think of like eating well and like
Yeah.
fueling yourself to get ready for the next thing.
Awesome. Yep, absolutely. So kind of like a rejuvenating, like filling yourself up kind of thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
I would add to that, I like Rachel's comments, but I would like to,
Mhm.
that you have to do it consciously,
Yes. Mhm.
filling in, but consciously, not
Mhm.
after, but during,
Yes.
which is to me is the refueling
Mhm.
capacity of doing it. Huh?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Absolutely. And um yeah, it can mean different things for different people too. And
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I think the common denominator is that people feel more of a lightness or more kind of a positivity around both of those words, which is
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I like the picture, the use
oh
of,
yeah.
to me, it's the long grass.
Mm-hmm.
Then all of a sudden you find yourself up to your neck in long grass.
Yeah.
And then how do you walk out of it?
Yeah.
And but I like the use of that too.
Yeah.
Talk about stress. Yeah.
I never thought about that for that picture. So that's a really good observation. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. That's
And
amazing.
especially if you can't see where you're going because the grass is too long, yeah, you have something to do. You have a big job on
Yes.
your hands.
Oh, yes. Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, good observation. I love that. All right. So now we'll get into talking about what the two different words mean and kind of relating them to stress relief or stressing less. So relief strategies, so we'll talk about relief first. So relief strategies are things that are unplanned, they're spontaneous, they're quick and effective things. So for example, they're things that you can do right away that instantly reduce your stress. And I know that I mentioned in my last talk of motivation having a toolbox of different strategies. So this is almost the same thing. So almost having a toolbox of different relief strategies so that when you're in the moment of stress, you can actually do something about it right away. Oftentimes people will hold their stress and only do something, when their stress gets to, way above their limit, right? So it could be absolutely anything that's quick and effective. So some examples I have here are listening to music, using an adult coloring book, reading, a chapter from a book. It could be calling someone to laugh or vent. It could be going for a short walk. The two most important things to keep in mind, though, is that there could be, and this is kind of why we kind of want people to have a list of different things to choose from, because, for example, it would depend on your location as to what activity you would do. So for example, if you're volunteering or working at an office and one of your relief strategies is take a shower, you probably can't take a shower in that environment, right? To reduce your stress. So it's having a list of different things to pick from that you can be able to do, you know, in different locations or different places. And another thing to keep in mind too is that your emotion at the time. So sometimes stress involves different emotions, and sometimes the strategy won't necessarily work for that specific emotion. So, for example, if somebody's really angry and they want to read a book, well, reading a book might not help because they might sit there and ruminate and, you know, kind of go through that. But if they went for a short walk when they're angry, that could help, right? So it's having kind of some different things to pick and choose from. But the most important thing is that it's quick, that it's something that you can do right away in the moment of stress, and something that's going to be effective for that that situation or wherever you are, the location and the emotion. So what kinds of things, and maybe you already do some different things that would be kind of categorized under the relief strategies, but what kinds of things do you do or do you think you would like to do for relief strategies?
I like to read.
Yeah, yep, it's a really
Relax.
good one. Mm-hmm. Yeah, great one. And I know for myself, I actually like to read too. That's one of my favorite things to do. Another one of my favorite things to do is even just looking up, you know, funny videos, or just to kind of get my head, you know, my head space in another space can be really helpful too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know what I would answer to that. Find myself in a quiet space
Yeah, absolutely.
and not do anything
Mm-hmm.
other than to listen to the sounds and the lights
Yeah.
if there are. But not do anything is,
Yeah.
it's almost challenging because it's so. But
There's always so many sounds and
yes,
things
there's so many things
happening.
going through, but just to move out of that, going into this space where
Mm-hmm.
it's well mainly dark or fairly dark, and
Mm-hmm.
just enjoying the moment.
Yeah, and that's a really great one because you can do that anytime, right?
Mhm.
You can be anywhere, and you can just, you know, I've even had clients tell me that, you know, they've just gone to the washroom for a few minutes just to kind of get away and have that quiet space, right?
Yes,
Like even if
yes.
they didn't have to go to the washroom, right? So
Hmm. Hmm.
so it's an easy one that you can kind of, you know, use anytime, right? So that's a really, really good one. Yeah.
I have a loft, and when I
Oh,
can
cool.
manage, I go up to the loft, and
Oh, that's so
it's
nice.
another world. I
Oh,
don't go there often now, but when I do, I just
yeah,
my
yes.
place.
And it does wonders when you have a space that
Mhm.
is yours, in your home or wherever you're living. It really does wonders because you can just go to that space, and a lot of times people will say that they instantly feel calmer as soon as they walk into that space, whether it's the paint color or, you know, a picture they have on the wall, or even just the setting and maybe a favorite chair or something, you know. So
Yep.
yeah, that's really nice. I love that.
Mhm.
Mhm. Yeah. So these are some pictures of some ideas of some relief strategies. And again, there's, you know, lots of different things that that people can do. And I think the most important thing, and we kind of touched on it already a little bit, is that it resonates with you. You know, it's really important that, you know, whatever strategy you do, it's going to bring you relief from that stress. So it needs to be something that is really meaningful to you, right? So you can see some of the pictures here. There's somebody playing the piano. You know, for myself, playing the piano would be very stress inducing. So, you know, so you can, you know, kind of gather, you know, what's going to work for you and what's not going to work for you. But it could be, you know, taking a short walk. I had one person the other day tell me that they were walking down one of the streets in uptown St. John, and they were still, social distancing and all of that, but even just being around people, just seeing other people and seeing the water and going down by the boardwalk was really helpful to them. So even just the location that you're in can sometimes be really helpful. There's, a cup of coffee there. So grabbing a cup of coffee with somebody, just different things like that, can just be really, really helpful throughout our day. Yeah. Any questions on any of that with relief before we move on to refuel? No?
It's all good.
It's all good? Okay.
It's all good.
Good. All right, so we'll go on to refuel. So refuel was kind of, if you remember, kind of feeling like rejuvenated and filling up our cup. And so refuel strategies are more so planned. They're things that you're good at doing. It could be something new. It could be, a favorite hobby, whatever it might be. But the difference in between relief and refuel is that refuel is something that's planned ahead of time. So you can look forward to it. It's rejuvenating. It's something that you enjoy doing and that you're good at doing and that you relate to. And people can explore, different activities and different things and see what they like to do. And that really gives us autonomy. So autonomy is when we have choice and, we decide what we're doing and what we like to do. So it helps build our mental fitness that way and helps with stress management or stressing less in that respect as well. So one of the things, and I'll kind of give you some examples of this, but also one of the things with refuel is that it's good to have a list to pick from. And it's good to have something kind of, something that you can plan ahead of time. And it can be different things, and a list of different things is very helpful as well, because you don't know kind of what you may need in that, when you're looking to refuel or fill up your cup. So it could be, some examples of this could be planning a dinner with, your family or friends. I know that restaurants are now opening. So planning a dinner out. It could be planning a massage. So, calling ahead and, booking that massage or booking that thing. It could be a vacation somewhere here in New Brunswick. I know before we started this call, we were talking about, visiting different places in New Brunswick that we may not think to visit. So it could be something like that. It could even be planning, planning a special outing or planning, some spiritual moments or things like that with other people, and getting together with other people. So the things with refuel is that you look forward to them. Is that you like to do them. They could be, things that you're really good at. They're things that really rejuvenate you. And the example that I like to use is that if you've ever, maybe you hadn't talked to a friend in a long time, and then all of a sudden you go for coffee with them or have a phone call or whatever it might be. And that feeling that you get after you've reconnected with somebody, that's kind of almost like rejuvenation or energizing. That's kind of the feeling that refuel gives people. And again, I mean, there's things that refuel, people will have on the refuel list that doesn't resonate with you. So again, it's really important to come up with your own things of what's going to work for you. And it's also important to block out the time for refueling, just because so many things can get, we can get busy and, things don't necessarily take priority. The refueling doesn't take priority. So it's always nice to make sure that we get that in somehow. And again, just like with relief, things could be anxiety inducing. So one strategy might work for one person and that same strategy might not work for another person. So I know about a month ago or so, or actually a few months ago, it was before COVID, happened, and I was working with somebody, and their idea of refueling was a pickup basketball game with a few of their friends. And to me, that would be extremely anxiety inducing. Not good at basketball or anything, but for them, that was a chance to reconnect with their friends. They planned it. They went out for dinner afterwards. It was an event. It was, refueling to them. But for me, that would not be good. So it's coming up with what's going to work for you. And these are some examples here of some pictures. So I know it's just the two of you, but have you thought of anything that would be refueling to you that you currently do or that you'd like to do in the future?
I like gardening.
Oh, that's a really good one. Yeah.
I like fishing.
That's awesome. That's so great. I love that.
Yeah. I like being next to the water.
Me too.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
sometimes in the water as well, but I wouldn't be safe as a swimmer there, but in shallower water, I'd be okay.
And that's a great one too. A lot of people will say that. Actually, that's true for me too. I like being by the water. There's just something so calming about it too, or even you can kind of get your five senses involved too when you're doing these things. And, even the sound of the water, lapping on a beach or, going over some rocks or something like that can be really calming too. Yeah.
Yeah. I like really picking rocks by the.
Oh, that's a great one.
By the rivers. St. Martin's a beautiful spot to pick rocks. Oh.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I love.
Do you paint them too?
No, I polish them and I sort of, toy at making montage with them and.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. But
that's so neat.
I don't have much time anymore, so.
Yeah. Well, now you have an excuse. You have to make time to refuel, right?
Yes. But St. Martin's is one of the most beautiful spots to pick.
Yes.
And the tide is very low. And these stones are ages old, and they have a long story to tell.
Yeah.
You could almost make up a story for each of the stones that you've picked up.
Oh my gosh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That would be so, that is awesome.
Yeah, and the shape of them, and I had, when I was little, I used to do this. I used to pick rocks from the beach and we used to paint them when we were little, and it was so fun just going along the beach and, picking up different rocks, and it was a lot of fun.
And when you're lucky, you find a picture.
Yeah.
There's a picture in the stone or beechwood as well.
Yeah.
And it's I should do it. Yeah, I guess that'd probably be one of my next refueling
activities.
Breaks.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that's wonderful. And it's so interesting too, because sometimes when we get thinking about this stuff or get talking about it, sometimes we forget what we used to do. Sometimes we're just so busy day to day and we think, oh my gosh, I used to do that and I used to love it,
That's
so
right.
Yeah, so it's really interesting to think about that. Yeah. Yeah. So these are just some pictures here of, different ways to refuel and, of course, the gardening. One that doesn't get often talked about is sleep. Making sure we get enough sleep and we're not, staying up too late, or, we're actually giving our body the chance to refuel itself, right, through sleep. So, yeah.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. All right. So the next little section here I have is of some resources. So, it's helpful to have an idea of what you'd like to do for relief and what you'd like to do for refuel, and kind of separating those two into those two lists just really helps, instead of kind of looking at, all the balls in the air, like I mentioned earlier about what we can do for stress relief. It's just kind of helpful thinking of them in those two strategies or those two words, and coming up with a list for each of those, and then trying some different things out. There's also some resources that I wanted to mention too that can help people with stress too. So I know I mentioned the 5-finger YouTube video, so you can look on YouTube and put in the 5-finger technique or activity, and it will come up with lots of different videos on that. There's also it's a application for phones, for cell phones. It's called Respi Relax, and it's spelled RESPI and then relax. So Respi Relax. And what that application is, it's an app that you can download for free, and it's a breathing app. So when you download it, it will have, it's almost like a little cylinder that has bubbles in it, and the bubbles will go up and you breathe in, and the bubbles go down and you breathe out. So it's a really cool activity to help with people slow down and breathe and to help in stressful situations. There's also some other resources too that can help, not in the moment of stress, just kind of when you're looking for some information and some different things. So a couple of my favorite podcasts are Mindset Mentor by Rob Dial. He's really good. If anybody listens to podcasts, there's the Mind Love podcast, which is really good. There's also Ready to Thrive. Ready to Thrive is another podcast that's really, really helpful. And then Brene Brown, who is a really famous author I think she's from Texas, maybe. Brene Brown has a new podcast out, and her podcast is called Unlocking Us. And it's a really, really great podcast, just helping people get out of their comfort zones. And she's kind of the expert in vulnerability. And she talks a lot about that and getting out of your comfort zone, and how, stressful situations may be really challenging, but in order to, grow, we need to get out of our comfort zone. So it's a really great podcast, and she has lots of amazing books too. One of her books is called Rising Strong, and it's a really, really great book just about, having the capacity and resiliency to keep going. So it's a really, really good book. I love that book. And a lot of my clients that have read it have had really great feedback. There's also if people are looking for another book too, there's also another book. It's called The Upside of Stress. It's by Kelly McGonigal. And that one talks about how we can befriend stress. So almost like we said earlier about the waves, we can't stop the waves in the ocean, but we can learn to surf. So it's almost the same thing. So learning how to deal with stress in a more positive way, and kind of befriending it rather than kind of going against it. And then of course, if anybody's looking for websites, there is the Heart and Stroke Foundation website. So if people go on the website, which is heartandstroke.ca, there's a tab at the top. There's a few different tabs, but there's a tab at the top called Get Healthy. And if you click on that, there's another tab that will pop up, and it will say Reduce Stress. And they have lots of different resources on stress, and different websites to go to under that. So it's a really great resource, just to even have, if you're, have 5 minutes and you're kind of looking for some resources, head on over to the website and check it out. Or if you have more time, listen to a podcast or grab one of the books that we mentioned too. They're great. I'm such a fan of lifelong learning. I always think that, we can always learn something new. So whenever a new podcast comes out or a new book, I'm always, eager to read it and see if I can gain any other resources or anything to use for myself as well, and also share with other people. So we'll go to the next slide here. So this is my last question to you is, what is one thing you learned that from today that you will share with somebody? And not to put you on the spot, I know there's only two of you.
Well, I like the 5-finger.
Yeah, that is a good one. I was thinking, save that for later.
Yeah, and you always have that. It's like your toolbox. You always have them with you.
Absolutely.
And I like that part. I liked as well, that, going back to the basics of basic needs of taking that break and keeping that level at a in a reasonable space.
Absolutely. Kind of that check in with yourself. What do I need right now?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Absolutely. Good. And do you think that when facing a stressful situation in the future, do you think that you might use some of these strategies going forward?
I think I'd be more mindful of what I should be doing.
Yeah. Absolutely.
The awareness of the trigger, the triggers there of that. But we, it's takes exercising, takes working at it, developing the habit of doing it. And I can't really say that I have the habit of doing it, but I probably would say that I should and must do it. But it's a matter of developing that habit of putting the brakes, sitting down, and looking at where the levels are.
Yeah. And you're absolutely right too, because I mean, even when I haven't done this workshop in a while, just due to COVID and everything that's been happening. And I used to do it quite often previously. And when I was looking over the notes and kind of getting ready for this talk today, I was like, oh my gosh, I was thinking myself, I need to kind of get back too. So it's almost like we're on track for a while, and then something kind of takes us off track, and then we're on track for a little while and something takes us off track, and that's okay. It's just when we notice, when that act of noticing when we're off track, if we just go back to what we were doing and continue on with what we were doing, it makes it a little bit easier on ourselves. And I know that just from working with clients, I hear a lot of people say, oh my gosh, I have to start over with that. I get off track and I have to start over with that. And what we say, as you know, from the motivation talk, what we say to ourselves really matters, right? But if we say to ourselves, I'm starting over again and all of that, it can really kind of bring us down a bit and kind of make us feel a bit discouraged. But if we say, oh, all well, that happened, and I'm just continuing on with what I'm doing, it's a little bit easier on ourselves. And it's a little bit more positive, just so that, it's a little bit easier getting back into it again. But you're right. I mean, all of this stuff, even for myself, when I was reviewing the notes and everything, it was good reminders for myself too, because I can get off track too.
Yeah, that's right. The remind. You use the word reminders, but the mind, and the earth, but the mind is in there, and we do have to get these triggers out. Well, whoops, okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, that's great. Good. And so that is the talk for today. So I have my